Okay, so that leave my computer and something right now as of like this guy who's that walking in an awkward manner while holding a helmet towards the purpose against client number most likely might be also infected by that the shadow of the first particles and that in as well something and most likely might be someone who works at like the mayor client office who would be really infected as shortly would be remotely controlled by that already would be that remotely and that they would be might be controlled by that the shadow of the positive might be the case that he might represent that I'm considering that maybe like shadow not just intent would be to that basically behind that take control of him might be most likely to maybe that spy on each and every single moment of that client since that client is like an important person it's like the mayor of that fucking like a person like to spy on like some each and every single moment and the change that like the mayor could make it so that like maybe that the developer might want to like act accordingly because that by as for like connected to like the creation and spreading of like the underground upside down which might have been going on that for like the past year, and I'm also predicting that it might have been going on. It might have that the understand that by sheer coincidence, like it might have been exactly once that the mall, like this new mall at like Hawkins was that finished its like building house and that once this that more open like I'm predicting that it might be constantly since that point that like I'm predicting that the spreading of like the underground upside down that but that absolute step beneath like the town of things that might have even began might have been possible for like the shadow points of during like the past year at the new kind of development. So like and like due to the sheer points of example like even like the reason behind like my doctor right now even the reason behind all this protest against like flight might also be debating that all this like people citizens of like the town of Province maybe believing that lately all this like power outages that like will be that might have started to like repeatedly happen ever since like the mall at like this new mall at like the town of Province start function might be like against certainly never done. So like due to this sheer point like I'm certain that uh, the people of the town of Province might straight away assume that came to the conclusion that it was due to that functioning of like the mall, this new concept of mall itself that which would be totally brand new to like the people of like the town of Province, like all this taking place such I know the time like the past so that I'm referring that so that the people of the town of Province might be thinking along the lines that to that basically the repeated power outages might be happening due to that excessive power from 100% happening within like the mall or like within like the mall would be along the lines like that would be so messing up like the whole power lines running through that would be on top of that consuming nuclear power will be also messing up like the power lines across like the town. I think this might be the reason for like the power outages, repeated power outages, and this might be going on for like a great uh, for like many months over like the course of like the past year. Ever since that the Mars like completion and that was like the Mars had started to like also might be the case that look like a pyramid. So like this might be the reason for like this black hole progress again by like the system that against against like flying and like the progress like the like what this that people to against kind of flying like what would be their desire what exactly would they want would be to like shut down like some this new month like shut it down permanently and that way so that way they get the power back and basically like also due to that this repeated power outage like this might have happened over the course of like I'm giving that that might have been a lot of that all of like the tower of like a lot of that appliances or all these people might have gotten destroyed due to that repeated power outages that missing of that the fuse and like stuff that everything might have happened and that the people of the town of that might have a whole lot of their appliances as well as like program dashes and appliances and like I'm considering that even with like current revelation for like even magnets as well across like around objects that getting affected that as well I'm totally putting my video to that how we can integrate that like faces monsters that has this effect on that integral devices like and light and everything. So like I'm totally putting that reason for like magnets getting affected and still might be due to that a new kind of black monster that will be also that might have also began spreading across that absolute just through like the all of like the shadow monster might have at like the underground upside down or like the position of the past year might have been spreading that new type of that monsters as well. that will be having that the side effect of that the powers of that affecting management and growth more systems within the network connection might be that the minion version of that tiny versions of like the size of the kinds of size of that particular business models. Right? Yet like there will be such size shadow monsters like in the beginning. So like million versions of like shadow monsters as well would be just like new type of monsters which might have been over the course of the past year might have been stealthily spreading around like the town of through the underground of the town. And these monsters might be like the monsters that might have like the side effect of that affecting that might be the case. Most definitely might be the case. So like currently without realizing the actual case, like which might be the reason for like the professor outside like the mayor's office, their client's office right now. Once you definitely know the reimbursements that as it was revealed recently by like Mike and that global work that watching that the movie at like the mall theater like basically it's like the power outage began from like that mall that I'm that as well I'm looking might be in actual due to like the very first like it's in the fundamental reimbursement that was because of it because we are like definitely like a fundamental reimbursement that scientists think like the laboratory but they might have affected like Cali and might have opened up like the gate from like the lab and might have like explore like by exploring like the parables from there along with like the forces there like I'm saying that Gary might have been attacked by his monsters who might have been under like the control of like the shadow monster so that since like the shadow monster can see what like the face monster can see and feel what like the face monster can see those tips not for the control of the shadow monster. So like I'm doing like Gary using her superpowers to like defend herself that might have been instantly seen by like the uh, shadow monster at that point. And like the shadow monster might straight away gain the aura to those not like good monsters who might have at that point eliminated all the other forces and maybe like that science alone might have like managed to like survive. But like Cali might have straight away been attacked through like the orders of like the shadow monster that way. And like the reason for like the base monsters like mostly having gone so far reached so far towards like the location where like the portal was might have been what that might have been created from the lab in Pacha um, through Caddy's lab help that and to bring the police. The reason for that is the building my friendship might be due to that the shadow monster like after like realizing about like Eleven's power to that be able to like close the gate in like the past past year like under the that at that point like the shadow monster might have only seen that the possibility of that there being multiple individuals across like the real world who might have like the same power as like 11 so that the possibility of like multiple times like actually all across like all across like the real world about which like the shadow monster might not be aware of might be that's about that the shadow monster might have seen and that way like the shadow monster might have what even that after like the closing of like, the gate by 11 like the shadow like the beginning of the past year like might have Thomas Paddy and might have created a huge army of like this monster in like the battlefield and might have sent the given or to all this army of like cases monsters huge army of like cases monsters like spread across like the battlefield and to like look for uh, any pair to like the real world. And it might be during this like sub for that like different like the channel might have given to like the cases not the army of like two government cases might have resulted in that the one of a set of like an army of like basic monsters but on often channel of like encountering that panic at that point might have been what might have happened. That way, Caddy might have got uninjured and might have been brought to like the shadow monster. The shadow monster might have taken control of Caddy, and that way, because like missing Caddy, like the shadow monster in like the past years, like might have created like multiple stealthily might have created, and this time like the shadow monster might have learned from his it's like mistake of that which might have taken control of with uh like basically and like the shadow monster was like plotting all of its like strategies through will in like the past like basically that lack of stealth being a huge factor in like shadow monsters like both getting destroyed through 11 and all that would be 11 and offer and all that would be another like the shadow monster might have felt and basically so this time like shadow monster might have given that absolute high priority like stealth and that way like like the shadow monster might have stealthily by taking control of carry that might have created like multiple like multiple pockets like gates that in like stealthy kind of areas all across like the town of Hawkins and like the main gate among those multiple gates the main gate might be exactly on like the mall this new mall of the town property and this might be the and so like it might be through like the main gates that like the shadow of the giving like the orders like to be bringing more and more of this like cases models as well as like the for instance new type of like million rooms of like shadow model It might also be under like the control of the shadow. It should be having the power to affect magnets like side effect of like affecting magnets like into all interesting to like the power potential like the real world. So like the case in like the small in like the power potential might be the case the really might be relation to it. Might be the reason for like during like even like the recent power outage by Mike and friends were like watching the movie the in like the theater like the mall like this with the fact that like that power outage began from like the mall and that had spread throughout like the house. Like this might be the reason because of like the main gate is actually being about the thing in like a stealthy underground location. Uh, uh, beneath exactly beneath like the mall. This new bound in like the railway town of might be the case definitely might be the and also like the reimbursements for like maybe for like mail clients like office itself to existing really at like a short distance from like this new mall as well. It's also like a possibility that so like maybe that way like the shadow master might have taken control of like one of that workers at like the mayor's office. Uh, one or like multiple of like the workers at like mayor's office like that have to tell who the particle of the shadow master even from way back during like the past year itself, like when during like the initial stages of like the stealthy predict of like the underground upside down, which might have begun from like this like stealthy main gate underneath like the mall in like the town of August. Might be the case. It's definitely might be but like even during like the beginning stages of that spreading of like that underground upside down or like the past years and like and people that the created that or like the ceremony might have managed to that create like send out multiple of it that dust particles and might have managed to that taken all of that multiple of like the workers uh, who would be working at like the mayor's office. Mayor client's office might be even way from way back then might be like the essential like that with the shadow of this and that might be spying on like the each and every single move and like the mayor client would be making and would be that acting and making the shadow monster's own moves of that basically exactly how exactly to that direction and like the pathway in like the process of like the project of the down up there down had to be that it might have stealthily through that stealthy spying and observing of like every decision of like the client it might have acted accordingly as for like the exact pathway and direction in which like the in which like the stealthy spreading of like the underground of the might have happened or like the course of like the last year according to like the author that might be the case that we going to bring. Okay, so the legal political repressions that we putting that the mayor himself, like the capital might have legal taken, might have chosen to like not take control of like the mayor and instead like to stealthily spy on like the mayor. So little to like stealth right by now would be like something that like the of like such absolute high priority for like the town person has. It will be or like the person like the mafia will be making its move to like once again like how like the underground state of like so like the organ so like until like that also like fully complete and one like the huge army of that the shadow of the that would be strong enough and would have spread to like the town of Hawkins enough to like the point of like basically them being able to that be confidently that remove like their own stealth approach that until that point like stealth would be such extreme high priority during like the process of like the predict of like the underground that of like the past year. For like the shadow monster might be the cases that Luna in the which like the shadow monster might be able to tell that basically that like the mayor is like an extremely important flying is like an extremely important person. He is that takes all sorts of major decisions in that town pocket. So like I'm looking like so solely due to this reason like solely self being of such extreme high priority and things like the an important person like mayor flying would be like totally would be would won't be able to like hide away from that attention. It might be solely due to this reason alone that like the shadow must have might have constantly decided to like not take a role of like the mayor to avoid attracting any suspicion and getting exposed. But like instead like the shadow must have like having taken control of the workers and like mayor's office to and probably having decided to like spy on like the mayor and on like the move that actually will be taken so that like the government can act accordingly and maintain that stealth and take back the progress of like spreading of like the underground of the down to the down of to reaching that enough of like an extent of like spreading where like stealth like where like the shadow master can let go of like its like higher priority like stealth might be the case that we might have the there might be like what like the shadow master might have done and might be what the shadow master might be planning for the definitely Okay, so like definitely we are mixing right now that for like in season three of like Spring Things right now with that celebration and like Independence Day being within like workplace like a little bit that similarity to how that in season two of like same like with that the Halloween Day having so such crucial relevance when it comes to that the story when it comes to like the spreading of the command word and everything and like the situation of well with that since it was during that Halloween Day in like season two like Spring Things that is through that video footage of will that is the that like voice was that printed evidence of like basically seeing uh that shape of like the shadow marker in that video footage land outline of like shadow marker with that video footage which was like a huge it's ended up being like a huge turning point with like not only Joyce but like Joyce being even able to like condense of as well through that evidence and everything. So like I'm bring a similar kind of like a huge turning point like I'm looking definitely what I'm looking going to be happening on like the 1, 2, 3 of like Stranger Things exactly in like 4 days and only like today in different stages like the finale that I'm looking where like I'm looking like in this like current search investigation of that usually it's a team of like Jonathan and Nancy as well as like the team of like um, Dustin and Steve as well as like Robin. The name of the like Robin as well. It was like the way Robin is like currently handling this whole thing with like Dustin's like whole mystery and like conversation and everything. Number two, like Robin the not create objection like number two like would be ending up being part of like their group and like which is just be sneaking out and maybe doing European investigation is also like about the veteran. Yet I'm making also the possibility of like a scenario where like Steve and Dustin once that Robin needs to help them translate that the message like a delivery. That it will be that Steve and Dustin that Steve's by the way telling Robin to that of the cover for Steve and that Steve will do alongside Dustin with this week now to that find more evidence that to once again go up to that mountain top and basically once again that use that Dustin that they could like get more find more message to like the server. So while doing this like while first we will be heading out to that place untuk orang next day, not like leading more to about the about video scenario like still telling Robin to like make out positive and that way like Robin that way extend their like the leading force to that work and like the spring job or by him or by himself where like I'm saying the piece that I'm going to that like Robin would be having like another on still which like and like Steve's presence in like I think so might be like the sole motivation for like Robin who might not suddenly dislike her job there to keep working there. Might also be the case with the so like I'm saying maybe the for like the now Steve telling her Robin to let out for it and maybe like Robin uh like after like Steven is going to be leaving like I'm little maybe it's not much a great delay like Robin like assigning one of other like workers who will be there like within that shop like to that cover for her as well and like we Robin as well indeed sneaking out of like the shop and like actually joining up with like the industry is like that episode. So like that way like I'm thinking that usually that the usually like that for finding out and usually maybe get that purple thing and that was Robin and Steve which is why that's one of I don't know the many purples and out there. It's not like other possible that I'm something is for like right now that's the trophy want like that core excitement of that just like this message that right now like totally critically telling and trying to like force Steve to like go along with like the thinking that that mountain top like once again was like the set up and check to like see if they can find out message. But like I'm thinking that Robin, even though Robin will be translating text message to business Stephen and Mary still at that point like Robin is still not being like the kind of person who would like, straight away believe something like that would be that Robin episode maybe still thinking along the lines of like probably being someone playing messing with them someone playing the fact of something would be along the line like Robin is getting so that this is not is be along the line and Robin is getting so like I'm thinking even when something is really telling for trying to like force people like go along with like but you know, sneak out like use job like and maybe Robin not allowed to stay asking Robin to like talk for him but like Robin not allowed to stay today is like person after that so that way like I'm doing that's the case when I was the like after like steel and use that ship at like the and shop will be all of like under and steel and by then like steel will be extremely angry with like Robin for like not covering for steel and like that way like steel already one like steel should pull your like steel already rushing off out of like that brings up and so depending on at that point like person stay exactly there and waiting for like steel shift to be over. It's like also like with another that and once like steel shifts would be over like until that point I'm a student as well as steel gets really angry towards like Robin for not letting Steve leave. So like I'm pretty much Steve's that should be over like Steve and the state away running off to towards like that now that she like gets with go. And I'm different that Robin should as well really horse by them. So like Robin as well steadily and that going up to steadily following them and that making it to that north of area. It's like the scenario that I'm referring. So like going to go initially Steve investing with it only entry at like Robin still I'm like eventually that Robin's managing to that convince them to be part of it. That thing usually like also like a never use scenario that I'm for it. So like anyway, like I'm the point that way I can find like the theme of like Nancy and John who's like going there side like investigator and the team of like Steve as well as like Dustin as well as Hobbit who is doing their side of the investigation. I'm just feeling that it would be also talking for to be a scenario where like in exactly 4 days once the Independence Day. On that very day would be when like in that both Dustin's team as well as like Nancy's team would be getting some sort of like a social major solid kind of like an evidence as to that the danger in which like the town that into that extreme danger in which like the town of Office will be like the person will be changed. Definitely like so like exactly like how like the Halloween state had played such was like such a turning point and that played such a crucial role in that season 2 of Spring in terms of like it would be like the upcoming Independence Day in season 3 Stranger Things that is the next turning point. That the for like the team of like Nathan Jordan and for the team of like Steve Basket and Robbins like it's an art that they were thing and it gives all them that like I was be fighting out for like the Hong Kong as well as that fight and that series is an art that I was and also like of the impressions for like made for like in like the case of like the team of like Justin Steve as well as Robin and considering that them lab even though without material with like Justin right now only just right now having a revealed about like this serious message to like Steve and like Robin as well caring about it like I'm looking like even though I'm just like on this very day that like once again then heading off most likely to that very same mountain top to wants to and like using that Justin lecture that even though they will be like searching for like more messages that all the way to from evening to even late night like I'm still them not getting any more messages like the not likely about which scenario that I'm and I'm them are repeatedly trying that the next day as well and that Robin getting fed up and Robin only telling shouting out and in a 9 to 9 afterwards that feel that it's that only a fine and basically Mugiram and Robin would be spread up and basically that Robin would be totally heading back. It's like also like the version scenario better. Like so that then like the next day as well and after like 4 days will be passing like I'm saying that even yet like I'm saying like Dustin will be talking or not willing to like give up. So Dustin will be totally hoping that maybe that even the like all those consecutive days like them not being able to find any message at all, any more message at all. So sorry, bro like I'm looking like Steve as well when we slowly starting to like I think so at that point and would be maybe still starting to think that maybe that Robin might be right that maybe you might have been totally fine. But like I'm looking maybe for like scenario being like on Independence Day as well as on Independence Day as well like Dustin and Steve that always giving out like the mountain and like the of the line in that during that Independence Day, right? All the fireworks and things will be happening. Like the round of pockets, like what Dustin and Steve would be on that very exact mountain top in like the middle of the night, like setting the cerebral for like any more message. So like I'm looking at that point, like Steve will be finding it fed up and she will be totally thinking on the night that like basically that he should be enjoying out there and having a great time instead of that but like the celebrations happening sort of reflect that out of him during the Independence Day. Like Steve will be only getting fed up with so he's starting to like get fed up with like Dustin and like Dustin's that listening to his message investigation and everything. So like I'm looking like Steve getting fed up with like Dustin and Steve that will be that losing like trust on Dustin at that point and is Steve telling Dustin that like it's that like of like connecting to like the public that unsteers message to an actual steers message. So like steers will telling first in that is like just a prank. So like everything by then like Robin herself most likely then showing up to that mountain top and that that getting bending out at like Steve made that because like maybe Robin might have been certainly looking forward to that spending time with that somehow managing to like spend time with that Steve on Independence Day on the night of that Robin might be along the lines like Robin might have really had that the answer like Robin as well that way, showing up to like around stuff, and then like that way as like Robin and Steve might be about to meet, and then the friend has like the disappointing that right to that way last second is when that the next message, mystery message would be that through like the sort of like the scenario that so like that makes the very next like mystery message and those things happening on like the exact independent they might just like the scenario that I'm looking for. So that and in that mystery message like I'm different like being that like unlike the first mystery message like in like the second mystery message that the number going to be more of that clarity as to that what my message might actually mean. It's definitely my opinion. So like more of like a serious kind of like an evidence that I'm putting through that screen message like I'm putting through the second screen message on Independence Day night. That is when that's how I'm going to bring that. That's what I'm bring that up in and Steve and like Robin at that point. So can you finding out this like the scenario that I'm saying. And at that point I'm definitely that about not only Steve but also Robin as well at that point. So getting instantly convinced from like after like decoding like the second message that like it's definitely not a friend and basically that like they are in danger. That thing scenario that I'm basically bringing up. Okay, so like, but me, my very much right now, it's definitely for like, for don't be feeling as of that, no, of choice, but so that follow like the airlines follow, and I'm definitely, offer definitely the situation for the that things like a thing like the town of Hawkins is kind of like a small town, like, and the majority of like the citizens of like the town of Hawkins would be well and fully aware of that who sheriff of is, and basically would be even that that the majority in like the town of Hawkins would be certainly even liking sheriff of might be also like some situations that limit the range so that definitely that half of my totally that have such a popularity among like the majority of the citizens of like the town of Hawkins. Because like often that might be seen as such a likable character that might be the present situations that we don't but like a bit right now which like the mayor clients orders like I'm shipping like offer still that totally those that's good best to like convince them without using any force to that those that's good best to like convince like the protesters to like peacefully leave but like I'm doing regardless of how much like offer would be attempting to do that and regardless how much like the protest majority among them to be like knowing offer and would be like in offer like still completely like to their to of them losing jobs to like the more like that them definitely would be standing against that forward and not be at all regardless of all of like forward attempts that they won't be at all willing to like pick up like their process like in the scenario that I'm doing and that way like I'm looking at that point that offer in a senior like a manner like to be take on feeling that absolutely wrong for like doing so we are like up to like offer having to be feeling forced to like listen to find orders and basically that forcefully that calling out his like causes and principles and like them totally for fully removing like the protesters like, using force and basically that way let them don't reflect the protesters getting injured is also back for the scenario better. That way like I'm bring like the that whole usage of force by that way that Hopper and team that reflect the protesters that means something completely since that Hawkins deciding like kind of like a small town like and that needs to be spreading all throughout like the town of Hawkins and that when you look at the distance until that point, who might have something like who might have found Hopper to be like a like several police chief like I'm looking like sheriff chief like I'm them all will be from that point on will be suddenly it's like Hopper from that point on that the scenario that I'm looking for. And for my other impressions for like from that point on that wherever that Hopper will be traveling between like the town of Hawkins that Hopper would be all that might being in a situation where like Hopper always being greeted with that extreme road stare and basically with that it's like pulled together and all together from that and even that that people will be shouting out like towards like over in that road randomly from the streets as well to be like totally shouting out in that road and towards that over there are people private sector of lecture down so it's like thing the scenario that I'm doing that way like that for popularity and like that way that might have happened at that point among like the majority of like the down for it like all of that like instantly getting destroyed uh through just following this net singer or from like the map like that removing that the protesters is like the scenario that I'm looking on the going on with the and also my doctor emphasis for like injury by the time like how we are realizing about like the danger that exists within like the town of Hawkins about like with the most likely existing like spreading of left and around upside down already a person to a great extent. Beneath like the town of Hawkins and all that. Like by the time Hawkins they're realizing this and might be like eventually realizing that like the majority that like the entirety of the citizens of like the town of Hawkins are in such extreme danger. Like at that point, I'm looking at Hawkins doing like absolute best to like alert all the citizens and like to move them to like the safe area uh, where like the spreading of like the underground upside down might have not reached or like under such an emergency situation happening where like Hopper will be that absolute genuine and loyalty to his like job and everything that to like the people of like and with like genuine concern to for like the to like the people of the town of Hawkins and when like opportunity that's good best to like convince like the people of the town of Hawkins to like move to like such a safe location within like the town of Hawkins but like during that point like I'm completely that this single act of black pop-up. Right now, I'm definitely improve for usually using force to like remove like the current protesters outside that client black off. So due to that, this like that would be created among the majority of the people of like citizens of black pop and like everything like even that attempt of black pop-up to like save like the citizens of like the town Hawkins at that point, initial point in like the case of to move them to like a safe represent that even attempt with that task in ending up being extremely hard for black pop because like I'm doing the that with this like not only like the people of the town Hawkins will be that currently disobeying Hopper, but like I'm doing maybe Hopper with that absolute genuine concern, like maybe even attempting like use force to like forcefully move them to a safe location once like Hopper will be realizing that they are not getting convinced by Hopper, but like at that point I'm afraid that Hopper even getting attacked by like the citizens of Black Hawkins is also like an individual person and and like this happening until that like the situation getting worse to like the point of like it being far to the danger being far to evident even to maybe even to like the citizens of like the town of Hawkins with like a bunch of like citizens with like maybe like an attack by the monsters happening and like citizens of like the town of Hawkins like getting attacked as well. It's like an individual also scenario that I mean that way like at that point like then all realizing that like genuinely trying to like help them and like then all at that point like listening to that Hopper and at that point like Hopper being able to like play that absolute major role in like saving a lot of that a lot of like the majority of the system of like the non-profit at that point is like bring the scenario where to which like that way like the process of like the non-profit eventually could be feeling absolutely grateful and even regretting that them totally acting so towards that and that showing this like towards at that point is that to mention different views of scenario that in that way that way like not only gaining that which like in it but like the citizens of like how like like when maybe even saying as like an even more like an absolute hero from that point of view. So also like an eventual problem scenario that I'm saying. So it's like the minimum 300 right now. It's sort of like this act of the current act of like imagine bringing like 11 to like some or 10 to people like I'm saying the engineer setting in like once again in like even eventual operation of like 11 minimum because like right now by we are going to example like tournament that the main individuals would be like the parallel versions of that people from like the real world. So one of might have got from like the past world to like the real world, most likely to for like one of work which might be into like okay, take down and eliminate like the shadow method by creating an entire army of like individuals or things like this, the similar kind of like superpowers of that of the event is definitely mandatory. Yeah, like I'm doing that for so like those great number of people that like we had seen before what might have been British ambition because like definitely considering the amount of ambitions that like the belief that like Microsoft number has recently seen in that swimming pool area might have not definitely been like the actual belief but that might have definitely been like the parallel version predicted from like the bad version or not might have also that's the real one. But it might be the real one. So Bernard might have agreed on experiment. Send that and Bernard might have done all sorts of experiment on like the parallel versions of all these individuals and might have secured that managing to like get them to gain telekinesis powers. Get like I'm looking that still their powers that whether even if it's like telekinesis, like I'm looking that their powers might have been like the intensity of their powers might be nowhere near close to like the intensity of power of like 11. Definitely might be the range. So definitely one main reason as well is that behind that what might be that the real world runner like from like the bad world right now most likely having shown up to that the real world from like the bad world would be most likely to create this huge army as well as to ensure to like capture 11 and make 11 that leader of like that army and to have them like go up to like the shadow monster. So making them by 11 go up to like towards like the shadow monster and use their power to like bring down and eliminate the shadow monster. might be the case definitely went through because like I'm sure thing that at least since like a year back like 11 had that close to the gate uh, close that case in that run of about it. Like I'm thinking about all this like I'm thinking that might have might be up to date about it's also definitely my opinion. So definitely this might be the case. So like I'm thinking that after that it's after like 1 year back like after like 11 has closed the game like I'm thinking all the most that like the shadow might have made or like the past year like I'm thinking like about which like would be like something aware of and might have been up to date about like definitely because that has to get when the first member like might have been observing selfie selfie manner like brand might have been observing all the movements of like shadow or like might be totally or going like the might be totally aware of like, how much it's in danger. It was like on the information like the underground of the down pocket of the back yeah, definitely through the Williams disparity of the channel might have spent so much like multiple gates might have also been created within like the uh, city like that's the underground area of Black Hawking town of Hawkins on multiple locations like multiple gates might have been created. The share amount of the control of Cali might have been what might have happened. Like the past year definitely mentioned about this like might be totally aware of it's also definitely mentioned. So definitely like numbers and definitely so that run of this like was great number of people that like really had seen before getting updated like like that run of my job brought them to also send them to that with that assistance to like different occasions spread out throughout like the town of walking to like the specific one goal which should be to that by also expanding other things into just the real world version of themselves that to basically form like that way to that kind of like implement on that and basically to have them gain superpowers while simultaneously like be able to for another being able to like maintain that steps with like the fan version of those individuals like being able to take the real world on and reflect the public and so on. So that this might be like Rena's plan. So like I'm spend like still seems like I'm from the background. It's like highest priority might be 11 like I'm spend like might have sent like a bunch of like those like army individuals from like the bad version of from like the bad but control of the that just might have given like the order to like all of like the town Hawkins and to that for like the league might be by expanding their army also to like for like that way like I'm flipping one among them would be that one among the parallel version was like of that individuals from like the real world and you see right now by sheer content will be present in like the mall right now as like Maxim is taking 11 to like the mall so like I'm just definitely one among them like probably finding 11 definitely might be understand quoting it to that from like scenario that I'm looking at. And that way like and it's only due to like comprehensive rules like this and that time like they might have not been able to like find 11 even the aspect of the for 11 might have been the case rules like with like this like 19 like 11 taking that rules of like pop like again like I'm doing this totally into spiraling into like 11 and that at one point that basically and from point under like definitely that individual among like from the but among like front of army like under that individuals so that are just like following 11 so now for like 11 and like then you'll be leaving from like the mall and like 11 will be getting back to that house in that for where like of and 11 there's like just another that and that way like the individual so make figuring out that where exactly 11 lives and that reporting that as well to that after just to that runner and that way like I'm sending a bunch of like the parallel versions of that even from like parallel going will be taking orders from 11 from runner and usually sending a bunch of them to that house you have like 11 kills and that way like using their superpowers like combined superpower attack and superpower like injury or power 11 and updating 11 and that will bring 11 to like secret base in like the real world where like they're right now hiding it and doing all of the like insurance in like the real world that aspect like doing this scenario that I'm looking over the and my birthday also like the condition right now as for like by sheer pointing with like not only 11 and maximum but also like Mike Lucas and Will as well like by sheer chances right now being present in like that very same shopping mall like I'm referring that to totally consider starting and like 11 the group of like 11 and maximum would be like the ones to see like the group of like Mike Lucas and Will it's like the scenario why like the group of like Mike Lucas as well as like Will only like realizing that like represent of like 11 as well as like in the case of more like there's another meta so for like then secretly spying on like what exactly Lucas Mike as well as like with Apple. So like I'm doing that scenario to be like as like according to that Lucas's plan, which is now to be like for the shop and buy the sorry item for like 11 while they would be looking for that item or referring that the group of them that might Lucas as well as Will totally running into three girls from their class, like their classmates who will be all three girls by sheer points. Definitely find it in that way the same shop where they would be disappointed that sorry item with like the scenario and everything. So like I'm referring that what 11 as well as that Maxine would be like steadily following Mike and others, then that would be steadily buying on that like what they will be shortly discussing will be that Mike Lucas as well as that that as well Mike and in that joyful and happy man of like interacting with these that classmates would all three of them would be good like the scenario that I'm so like at that point I'm in that for Maxine as well as like 11 totally feeling that they have been betrayed by both Lucas and Mike. Also like the scenario that and that like Lucas and Mike are like going to cheat on that will be around the lines on different mapping and then at that point it would be straight away coming to like assuming and coming to like the conclusion like the scenario and at that point also comes when like mapping so we get extremely embrace of mapping in this straight away about to that sharp towards like I can others to that went out and shout out to that certainly that personality and mapping will be pulling 11 along with her to that is need to have 11 as well like react in such a manner and like for them out like scenario that but like I'm sitting at that point as like my team will be pulling trying to put 11 but like I'm bring that 11 for the pulling team back and I was like 11 at that point like serious case telling my team that they something around the lines of like if they doesn't want that why go after them will be along the lines that like even like he displays that selling matching to like at that point like I'm talking that side of like 11 numbers but maybe influencing matching to like the point of that matching as well this time who did it seriously and I'm looking like for me exactly like and that way I can feel like with like that as you see difference like 11 as well as matching deciding to like see for a cup was like might as well as that time would be that being the scenario that I'm saying. And that way without even saying a word and without even letting Mike and them know that like matching and 11 have seen the in like them all like I'm giving them both that returning back. And then remember you can like because like has to put carefully phoning matching to find out and like come at that point like matching like it can that up you see this phone that that little absolutely behind that with the knowledge of that matching having seen Lucas in like the more like and because totally to be at that point that looking that Matthew would be asking Lucas as to that like something along the lines of like connecting to like Lucas showing up to like the mall like and putting that and I think just casually like seeing if like Lucas would be telling the truth to like Maxine about like having gone to like the mall and having like the first place. So like I'm putting like Maxine with that in a tricky manner like in a dissenting manner like only casually asking Lucas as to like where Lucas was during that time period where like Lucas was protected. So like I'm Lucas at that point maybe that just casually once again like as usual he would have lied and left about like Lucas like casually lying to like Maxine about like going to like the mall along with like Mike and Will uh that person after that especially because of like it being like Lucas' strategy of like getting that sort of item like and putting this like Lucas might want to like get him from that Maxine until like my delivers that item to like 11 and all that would be around the lines like really good with so like at that point I need to like Maxine so like at that point I'm sure that Maxine will be taking this even more seriously that like around the lines as well genuinely uh I've had was like cheating on that thing would be along the lines Maxine would just straight away come to like black and straight away like Maxine even point 11 at that point and basically telling 11 as to like how it would have lied to that Maxine about like going to like the mall and I'm looking like that way like I've been even telling element to like also half my just like where I was there at that time. So like I'm looking that way like my eventually showing up to like also form of a bit like this whole process which would be like perfectly wrapped up and basically within that process would be the sorry message like items for like elements like within our so like as like my would be like knocking at the door itself like I'm looking like an experience right and this level would be like opening the door and like an straight away would be asking Mike to like where he was around that time. So like I'm doing like Mike maybe to like keep it for some point like I'm doing like Mike only maybe even lines to like at that point is like personality that I'm waiting right. So like at that point it's like next to generation 11 lag easily straight away blindly and Nicole man telling Mike that she's breaking up with Mike and like slam like the scenario that I'm looking for and Mike was getting a version. So like that way Mike not being able to like tell the truth to like 11 that like he had for then so 11 like that's already like the scenario that I'm looking for. Also, that is different to my friends and because they protect that those that and group of people that they among those group of people that like really had seen that before like according to my friend to me was me having got affected by and being replaced by like the fan version really like I'm among those group of people that we had seen before that we didn't have and like and that might have been not only like the fan version of Sarah, but like that might have been like, the real world Barbara as well as like that might have been like the fan version of Bob as well. So like even though the real world Bob and one of eliminated like like the parallel version of Bob methods will manage to like survive. And also having technical because that run of might be like the case of the human brain definitely like this would be that shopping survive for like according to my earlier expression self that I really want to like understand in the scenario to be like and those to the people like in might have from like a bad world like there are things that were normally just for like pop up through Sarah the battle version of Sarah and not only surprise for like Nancy hope that the turn of like the real world Barbara. But like there will be also like this like massive surprise for like Joyce as well through like the return of Bob, but not the actual Bob, but like through like the bad version of Bob. It's like also like similar scenario that I was going to okay, so like the Cleveland reimbursement right now has so like your choice right now going through that much for the that static for magnetic devices and such on the like and even the audio to that by now choice having a lag notice that the magnet in like the shop that at the springs and like not working at all. So like I'm like not having to its like magnetic property at all. So like I'm even instantly like the first thing that might have been to like so it's might have been her fear of her so months of that her lack of I'm going to with like the parent word and the child word of identity probably has something to do with that magnet that probably happens in such an extremely strange manner like that. It'd be like the first thing that might have popped up into Joseph's mind, definitely might have been that fear of that, but the range of like 90 like 100% like so that to that for like close to that 20% of that plus of that the positive such we are like I'm talking like those who are right now trying to go through all those books and writes trying to like try to find a logical explanation for like all those magnets of that acting in such an extremely often strange manner uh might be the case right now. It's definitely my difference. There's a bit only hoping that is that like those looks would like only give those that proper explanation for like the magnet and like those of like acting in certain steam space manner in like percent. Uh, and like that should be the pretty hoping that she gets an answer out of that, but that like which might have absolutely no connection to like the parallel world. If we want like those to be the pretty hoping and like certain proof that peacefully, but like I'm doing that later, may not get it that position based on being able to like find such that find answer. Logical explanation to like the way that the magnet reflects versus the way it would be acting in the it's definitely my experience. So just at that point, like I'm putting one like those would be done going through those steps like I'm putting like those you will start like feel more like a fear that basically that basically like this like whole situation of like the magnet like having something to do with like the bad so like I'm going to select the step pulling that starting from this point of the like so like the scenario that I was and I was going like the next time for going up to like Joy's shop like I'm doing that Joy's coffee uh, telling about the like the magnets at been screens to like forward and like I'm looking like in that interaction of Joyce itself like just by saying like that in like the point itself like probably instantly able to tell that like Joyce feels like the magnets at been screens was behind something to do with like the bad button and like channel but like I'm from like Hopper straight away would be once again that uh, straight away would be assuming that they need that like there will be some other casual explanation for like the night actually the way it is. And I'm looking like since like when this like the genius like as a range certainly I want like so it would be and even while properly saying this like I'm sort of someone being assured being able to like comfort towards the doors like this another time. But like from Hopper's point of view like Hopper only only straight about saying that like like as like this is probably being some sort of casual explanation like Hopper is genuinely feeling that this is the whole incident and issues with like the dangers of the matter it will be all behind that you all with like a whole year back when 11 had closed the game like since then like the thing was really probably over to the lines like of this way that's in like the scenario there. But like those things will be only stuff and I'm the ones like those returning back home like on those casually interacting to with Will and basically like the whole things like basically after like goes going through like the books like static electromagnetic like reverse books like and like goes to be having like that whole that phase of in logic that like those of it only seeing in like the acting like the way it is like that choice that's without will be ensuring to like not worrying when at all and without worrying when like with that approach that like those will be acting asking that a lot of persons connecting to like electromagnetic uh device and stuff to will such at least and basically that answers that we would be giving to choice like and that choice and those that we are then that can be say increasing even further more as perfect about because that basically the parallel word probably having something to do with like the manufacturing the way it is definitely uncorrect. But like and for a choice like we shown that actually concern towards that will by definitely that removing all the magnets in like the home and basically to ensure that Will doesn't find out that what's happening with like the dinosaur. Because like Will the first genius like and behind that has to clear that it is that Will even finds out like the mag I think range that Will be seeing like the possibility of like once again like the battle was acting up and like channel interacting like that's about the thing they will be only seeing or such the possibility and like that we are going to straight away the instead of getting into the sense will be getting paid and good things so like I'm going to know sorry will but at the same time for like go to like gently once and get to offer and try to like random pop and find out what like that like when like that that Bob like me it will be offer alone that those will be having to like rely on to like convince and to start another investigation to like find out the truth exact truth as to like why Magnus are acting in such a strange manner and like suppose to clear like clear like that whole thing out of the future and what is it and like the usually everything by then like as for like the magnet I can strange like usually having nothing to do with like the parallel or like if there are like as nothing to do with like the parallel to like find out what's happening before it's too late. So we are on the lines of like those will be like that assistant will be going back to laptop and we see is delivering class and then pop up. It's like the scenario that I'm looking at. I'm the different people at that point pop up probably not being willing at all to like delete so it's like it's definitely not the mission. But like I'm doing for like the input scenario to be like the document or anything so delivering like that turning point scenario happening exactly like in season 2 of the thing like that turning point scenario happening during Halloween day after something that still the final glimpse on that turning point kind of a scenario happening during that the in season 3 of Stranger Things during like and they were like I'm trying wouldn't be just like the group of like about skills as well as like Dustin that will be getting more of like a valid kind of like an evidence kind of for like the unfolding things change of like something to like the message as well as like the team of like Nancy and Johnson getting even more of like serious kind of like a turning point kind of like a serious evidence of like a realization of like of being dangerous, but also that an investigation which was been happening by the team of like Joseph and for Rappel, then as well eventually on it will be understanding of that really on in within say that them as well will be finding some sort of like a solution evidence as for like the for that as for like the for adventures with like the parallel world, the strangers with like the parallel world will not be over and basically that like the Salamons of still like on the slack move and basically or have been on the slack move for like the past year and basically the town of Morgan that we in such position and extreme danger saying the kind of position the realization of everything that's happening to these three teams simultaneously on that on like very like on the very night of like intense state, like film scenario that I'm the number of okay, so like the human direction right now as for like two first house that Joyce has right now brought like all the great number of books of like electromagnetics to understand like it will be like it might be totally like the house of like that science stage of like Hawking of like micro machine it's definitely my favorite but like it will be just home like you can see towards him that like Joyce instead of well like I'm just like it will be towards him that like Joyce right now without of the books and all of them doubts connecting to like the magnetic acting space. It's definitely my tutorial and it will definitely absolutely the my tutorial for like so it's not asking about like her suspicion and that confusion and all of this stuff into like the manufacturing space, not to build would definitely will actually being concerned for build and those not wanting to like create any sort of fear that it definitely might be premise. But like this might be the sort of for like those right now straight away getting all of not to that will but to that most likely this house which would be that most likely the house of like that science piece of like might be but it's definitely meant for him. Okay, so like definitely meant for him right now but like Jonathan taking multiple photos of that right where like Jonathan right now would be straight away assuming like and dealing like the words of that woman and even straight away saying that it's like totally some sort of like a disease of rat while on the like in the case of Nancy that the friend might be actually having a bit more of like a suspicion and a bit more of like a gut feeling on the friend right now, maybe Nancy having right now. As for like the rat acting like strange manner, maybe remotely that having possibility of like any sort of functions in the file. So like I'm due to that instinct like I'm doing right now. Nancy right now simply sort of stuff like pulling down like the curtain and like and straight away like on the pen at that point says like you can't like I'm putting falling onto like the case and onto like the right end of that point I would be like the right screaming and like in such extreme manner and I was right like at that point like Jonathan as well as Nancy if he's watching it that absolute shock as like the sunlight will be affecting like that right to such extremes like exactly like how like sunlight had affected when in that back in like this movie. So like basically just like I'm going like being such an absolute shock for like Jonathan and Nancy and I'm just like at that point I'm throwing the sunlight either like eliminating that part or like I'm throwing that sunlight resulting in like that part going through such extreme suffering and pain and then slowly I'm looking like the rat like that one slowly coming down and basically turning back into normal, behaving in a normal manner. Reflecting the scenario that I'm telling. That's the case that I'm looking maybe like right now itself like nothing and Jonathan maybe figuring out that basically like the shadow mode has been still on the road even after like them having closed like the gates to the pathway. Uh, a year back, a whole year back, would be along the lines of like the realization that being Jonathan, maybe right now, because I'm state like it's like one among like the other articles of the democracy. And my doctor impression that like if that's the case, then I'm trying like Nancy will be for the brain Nancy to be easily able to come to like the conclusion that it is so like that reason for like for the like feeling all the fertilizer would be totally for like the wine like the underground of head down things like those are like plant like wine like to increase like the pace of like the growth would be most likely the reason for like the when most likely might be under like the control of the element of like by the putting fertilizer like they might inactively to be controlled and to be transporting fertilizer towards like waste on the down upside down wines to have like the wines grow at like an even more faster pace. If you know let's get a conclusion that I'm different like naturally without necessarily will be coming down with it's like the other of development. So if that's the case then I'm looking at the next task for like uh for like the investigation of like Nancy Johnson would be to like find exactly where exactly the under of that where exactly the shadow monster with such an absolute stealth across like the entire statement like the perimeter of like the entire the town of things to like find out where exactly the shadow monster might be through such a remote plan of will be that will have created like and spreading like underground upside down. So like where exactly like the founding would be like the underground the spreading of like the underground upside down to be that to find this out would be like the next ultimate and crucial path for like Nancy and Jonathan and to be able to do that before it's too late. It's like the opportunity that is for you to and that was bring that is when I was bring like to not feel that find where exactly that the underground upside down which is just it might be getting created and spreading through that topic other thing definitely Nancy straight away will be calling her and seeking the help of that the church of to search like the perimeters of that the round project to find out where exactly that underground of that will be stealthily be represented for the stealthily what is spread with like doing the scenario of the third of the scenario that I was about like so like so maybe that way after like okay Nancy's phone call like I'm thinking that maybe at that point might be when like the topic is really like offer will be changing like the phone calls from those and when can't into like the mechanic acting strange and like those totally yeah like the interaction with like the club like science speeds of the club like and putting like those confusion with like the magnetic acting things having an involvement to like the what will be tracing like tenfold is like the scenario that we have. Those straight away calling hopper that that within the fishing to that hopper the scenario that approach. So like at that point, like I'm top of kind of like getting an overall idea as for like even though hopper won't be that would it only get it would have one thing as would be clear at that point that like by now that the shadow monster might have done with that aspect self might have made a lot of moves and might have done a lot of things within like progress within like so that are within like the round of plans already like the round of opportunity that extreme range of kind of execution about which like not really like when that is the round of but like uh even not only Hopper as well as their team as well, but even not even Owens will be aware of who also like along the lines of like the fear that hope and so like at that point like Hopper we straight away calling Owens and asking Owens about this and then women accepted to like the sheer brilliance of like that are which help us and maybe even like even not even Owens being aware of and Owens as well maybe only being aware of and realizing this only one step of a new coin and then on this like the other person and that is the over and another. Okay, so like Leland's very interesting right now as for like that right that was like aggressively making noise and trying to like get out the case right now. So I'm really getting turned side and like I'm just like that I'm just very most likely would be due to like the shadow monster. It might be only right now that like the shadow monster seems like everything that the shadow monster controls like the shadow monster can see and feels everything that is controlled like and the different techniques still it will be only since like the shadow monster right now is controlling way great number of living things as compared to like in season two, where like seeing those number of like controlling of like things as well as like the famous monsters right now, like the person like the total number of like living things that like the shadow monster would be would have taken control of by now, or the person like the master leading to the present situation. So still the great that and maybe it will be only by now, it will be only right now that like the shadow monster might have even realized that basically the presence of like Nancy and John that is the exact two people among like the group of individuals who had played the role in like basically exploring like the shadow of the plan back in like in the two and like the game very close like I'm doing that with like that right one of the right in control of the shadow monster in like the getting found and in like the process of like those two individuals like Nancy and Jordan and the right now to get rid of that evidence and like the shadow monster right now using its laptop to like across to like to cause like an exposure of that within like the case, like the scenario. And that way, like I'm saying, like the shadow of the laptop is, protecting its like evidence and the to like prevent like Nancy and Jordan from being able to like figure out what's going on about like the most of like the shadow of about like that's that being under like the control of the shadow and all that like to get rid of that evidence that will prevent them from finding out about it like I'm right now the shadow of them probably causing like explosion of the right now it's another that I'm looking at. So it's like the ambition right now with that the rat right in like the case right now having float explorer and turned it but only with one like different ones are referring to be more like that exact stuff like more where like everything had first found like stuff in that trash can like I'm referring that waste in like I'm going at that point like the exact site in this like stuff works and everything that might be like a site around like site most of that I'm right now to skip sort of the map would have turned into definitely my impression. So this might be the case definitely different. So like I'm going for that leakage from that Hawkins lab like another laboratory that might have been forced through such a manner because like I'm doing what the shadow monster might have done like the bug might have been the shadow monster might have created like a bunch of like up underground hub like wine like hub like basically hub monster in like the parallel world in the parallel world side of like the Navy laboratory. Definitely my favorite. So that will be put that so close to like the gate within like the real world energy laboratory and something like that how like as well how like the function the how will be functioning would be like will be giving that like remote distance allowing and making possible for like shadow motion to like control all living things like a at like a certain range perspective from where at like a very steep area surrounding the tree from where like the hub will be especially my friend and in that far end point where like the range would be anything like the next hub would be created. might be getting created according to like the orders of like the shadow monster. The mind will be creating shadow monster will be controlling the mind and creating like the next hub. And this might be the situation in like the channel world throughout there will be multiple hubs all across like the bad world. Might be the cases definitely my representation is that this might be how like the shadow monster might have managed to create like so many great number of that underground upside down holes circular holes in like then of the laboratory. It's definitely my brain was to definitely all those like multiple holes might have been most likely arrived from like the battle world that due to that the hub that literally the shadow monster being able to like control like the rats and basically might have straight away taken control of like all the of like a bunch of rats from like the backward and might have totally that first like the person like the rats like the like right now and might have that way turned rats into like such minion faces monsters and it might have straight away not like the minion faces monsters and might have straight away order those uh, given the orders to diabetic control of like all those like minion monsters and might have challenge of like straight away order for those minion monsters let's straight away pass through the gate to like the real world and like to start creating all like multiple underground upside down code and this might be like how this like multiple honeycomb the downside code might have been sort of created underneath like the energy level is definitely what might happen in new alternatives. So like by the time like both run up and Cohen had like, found out about like the gate even extending downward on the down like and by then itself it might have been too late. Like multiple honeycomb like underground shadow holes might have already been started to like create to get created even back then just specifically might have been by the time run up as well as like might have found out about this especially in friends. So like this might be how like otherwise it might have been so large that there might have been multiple hubs and using and I'm afraid the importance of hubs would be extremely important when it comes to like controlling like living things in like the real world for like the shadow monster which like perhaps in like the fan world. The element generation. So like for the shadow monster like it means to control a living things in like the real world definitely all these hubs will be essential and will be needed to be created. Maybe definitely my with rendition. So that way I can bring that may be how that even in like the pumping field that while copper was left for searching in like the pumping field like copper is then hearing like the sound of like monster and the things that might have been definitely the rats that might have exploded from like the panwood and might have been turned into like that tiny stuff like monsters like we might have created like down the down force honeycomb like force and might have made it all the way into like the surface at that point. Might have been succeed on like the complex that and that way like I'm the that's and how much that from like the company to it when how much that like the complex field for like the most time might have been actually particularly when it comes to like I'm putting like a similar kind of like a process might have been what might have been going on in the case of Will back in like the past when Will was that had gone up the jeff and while Hopper and good interactions in like say Will from the Japan had found Will in like such advanced situation with like the same on like Will more which would be more likely connected to like the one that goes definitely through that thing like and like this like the spreading of like Chagamata particular Chagamata of the thing will like something like that causes so easy to that cause and those like interrupting that process by saving with from such a trap state might be the sole reason for like that spin delay which might have happened in like the process of that will explosion and they need to returning will into a dark like monster but like something that first happened like something that will might have turned into like a humanoid face monster so like I'm pretty all the humanoid faceless monsters might be that it might have been at one point that human from like the bad version of real world human who might have lived in like the bad world happening at one point. And I'm looking like what that the shadow monster might have done might have been through the control the shadow monster might have only thoughts like it's like spreading of everyone of the time might have taken control of them specific humans alone who might have had like I thank you alone to definitely my potential. It might be only humans with like I thank you alone that might it was like shadow. So like the other when it comes to like this takeover of like and turning humans into faceless humanoid monsters like something like happening. The shadow monster might have like one of like might be saying I feel as like some sort of like huge element that involved that for like the shadow monster as part of like the shadow monster go to like take over and everything like I feel might have sort of major role to play the human redemption. like I'm still determined information that like it might have been totally clearly that parallel version of runners that experiment with like the parallel version of the event that might have resulted in like maybe ratio of factors might have resulted in like the fair in like the case happening in like the in like the parallel might have happened and that way like and the point like and it might have been different to like the situation in like the real world where like when they in like the parallel might have been far bigger than when the real world element has created like the gate in like the real world it's definitely member 300. So it's definitely able to bring like at that point the for the second month of which might have been under like the control of the bad uh, under like the control of like the shadow monster might have straight away entered into like the lab of like the bad versions for and might have straight away eliminated that might have been one of bad versions and might have straight away at that point the shadow monster might have fence like even though the skills that my the bad version of the might have had like a high IQ like it might have been like but even more basically that IQ of like the bad version of element that might have practiced like the shadow monster like and so like so the control of that monster and like the bad version of 11 even though the bad version of 11 as well might have had to the house like like uh seeing amounts of that not like the bad version of 11 might have probably gotten its really something with like that like the bad version of 11 might have not been able to do anything at all and then like might not have been like a similar monster that might have jumped out of that case but like a bunch of monsters might have jumped out and then like the shadow monster might have given the or to like those monsters in that subject that I give of like language knowing down like straight away order like the monsters to like up that like contract the parameters of 11 and that those monsters as well might have put that very same thing that was like counter to like the ones that is put onto that will count as well by widows craft and like the parameters as well. Definitely remember for instance like like in the case like the parameters of 11 like we might have not gotten like in like case and everything like in the whole explosion and like might have happened and like the parameters of 11 might have turned into that a humanoid faces model and this exact humanoid faces model most of might have been that exact humanoid faces model that like Eleven had in that the past like during Furnace experimented like the real world elements to have the like the dark world like at that point said like that parallel uh at that point said like the monster face monster writing that Eleven had seen in like the dark world might have been like the parallel version of that Eleven uh who might have like the gone through like explosion and might have turned into that uh, might have been what happened. So like due to that event possessing that telepathic powers, like event might have while like that is more try to like communicate with like event in like the dark world, like event might have been able to like send that like that most of that has showed up and was trying to communicate like event the dark world was one at one point was like exactly like event exactly like event. This something like event might have been able to create both memories and using the telepathic power that actually might have retired and might have uh, it might have been that might have been the reason for like 11 in like the past having said that like 11 is like a monster it's also like 11 for instrument to want it. So like I'm definitely precisely then will getting targeted and will really getting affected by the case of pop of like eliminated by like the case of monsters or like some of the channel like that might have been due to like even though Bob does like have all those like quick problem solving skills and everything that but still for my job definitely don't have extremely high IQ might be the sole reason for like I'm bringing them back and that's the channel monster like probably giving the order to like the case not start like case with monster to like eliminate Bob instead of like abetting and turning Bob into like a humanoid face monster. Might have been solely due to the reason that Lima is so like I think it might probably be such an extremely important and precious thing for like shadow movement. Certainly meant for a thing while turning a human into like human basis might be the case of being other things. So this might be like that reason for like will who has already been revealed to be a genius so that we will have like Mikhail pages and then the fact that like Barbara was like targeted and Barbara in Barbara's case as well it was like and was like scenario where Barbara was abducted rather than eliminated like I'm assuming that is that as well I'm assuming definitely might be might have been also due to that buffer as well that costing definitely high might be located definitely might also be able to so like my tutorial question like it might be only in that the case of humans alone that like the shadow of the movie like giving so much priority to that the factor of IQ, a high IQ. So definitely it might be the case of me notification because like when turning humans into like humanoid faces monster like a like shadow monster might have to like spend a lot of energy. So like maybe that like one possibility that and so like and even maybe at that point like the shadow author might have the priority of like making it and making doing that process count like one possibility that I'm like or like turning humans into like human artists might have like way important purpose for like from like the shadow author point of view when compared to like the purpose of like turning rat into like faceless monster that like faceless monster which will be for like the sole purpose of like providing like fertilizers and nutrients to like the vines so that like the vine will like grow and like the face as well as for like the rat will be turning into like a faceless monster would be able to that would be only done so for by only being assigned to like the task of like the taking and like the spreading of like the underground of the tunnel honeycomb like tunnel like that would be like the only thing that would be that getting control by like faces motor but like when it comes to like the control and ignore of like human and turning humans into like human most of like and even when it comes to that like I'm like the shadow motor will be having way more bigger intent behind turning humans into like inner space amount of microbrain. So definitely this might be the case, definitely my brain. So like the level of like this might be only like for the humanoid space amount of that exist in like the bad world would be only humans in like the bad world who might have had like high IQ like all the remaining humans like I'm like the shadow master might have probably ensured to like eliminate might have been what might have happened. And then like um, those few individuals that group of people that we have seen recently in like the last like and those might have been among like the remaining few things humans from like the panel version of humans in like the panel world that might have managed to like survive like the attack of like attack and captivity of like the big monster under like the control of the shadow monster might have been like the case and like they might have escaped to like the point of eventually managing to like make it towards like the base of like which like Pranav might have set up in like the backward the police might have and that way them that way might have been totally grateful because of like going through extreme colors of that having to like lose so much of time and years like in like the backward or by being always under the threat of that getting captured by like the or captured or alienated by like this models and like the language or like those conversion of like individuals from like the real world like this like finding might having something that they might be so yeah and extremely grateful about even to the potentially memorable. So like that way like I'm certain that even though Pranav might have experimented or done like I'm certain to the person like they might have been totally grateful to Pranav for like saving them might be that case is definitely my best friend and that those group of individuals might be loyal for all of them as well. Might be also the case is definitely my best friend. So like split up the friend that and them like definitely there might be the fan version of Sarah as well as that maybe Barbara as well as like fan version for as well most likely in that group of and still that or even Barbara as well would be was from the career but would be also probably uh right now by now in like the percentage of the low and shoot because like oh, that unfortunate that kind of shell that would be only place where like Barbara so going through the process of like the bad word will be feeling safe and hence that there would be that maybe that certain extent of like a grateful feeling from Barbara towards like and so and even though Barbara as well might have gone through an experience that by now might have gained superpowers like that still Barbara as well might be that also that following the course of that might be also the case that we went to. So like I'm still thinking about the rendition that like the Batra, the eliminated Batra that like elementary like the past had access to the access to like the last word and found might have been that Naquity might have been like the parallel version of like Batra and not the real word Batra. It's definitely my brain. So like basically in short, like my consider questions were like towards like the end of that season two of that Stranger Things, like if Eleven hadn't managed to like close the gate in time, but Eleven had done it like like what might have been that the consequence if Eleven had failed back then the consequence might have been one main consequence might have been that when the real world will might have also that that version might have happened and might have resulted in like the real world will uh, as well turning into like a humanoid face, which might have been what might have happened at that point. If like 11 had failed to like both to get violent, it's definitely my experience. So like the preparation plan like back in like the beginning was like the real world 11 had opened the gate within like the laboratory and like the basic amount of humanoid monster had stormed like at that point I was like what might have happened might have been like that humanoid papers monster might have seen 11 and might have actually been able to like send like 11 like IT and might have chased after 11 to like capture 11 and to turn 11 as well to affect and like turn 11 as well into like a humanoid based monster might have been what might have happened. So like what might have happened will be why like the still I'm looking like at that point like event might have been close to that the location within like of the laboratory where like events home might have been. It's definitely my correctly like I'm saying like the base one might have first targeted event might have been what might have happened. Might have chased after event but like other event might have barely managed to like, make it to a like events home and might have quickly down set off to like events home. And I'm looking like that runner might have ensured to like while creating that elements like room like runner might have ensured to like create it such a manner that it will be probably easier stuff to like create or to like the experiment on 11 or that being to like for element to like gain that ultimate so powerful and intelligence to the top. So like I'm doing that the room while building the room of like 11 like might have ensured to like create that room and the door of that room is such a matter that will be probably and extremely tough and hard to break up, especially when so that might have been like the situation and that just barely 11 might have that then in like the very beginning itself, that 11 might have managed to like survive like the gap of like the similar cases most of that and might have been what might have happened. So definitely my brother in this book. So like maybe at that point like the case or like similar not to like on its like frustration of like not being able to like after 11 like might have straight away strong through like the lab and destroyed everything inside and might have eliminated a bunch of like scientists success in like that might have been what might have happened. So like then like the treatment of might have straight away proves that it is same sound that 11 had made it through that escape from the lab and made it to that not of like it might have been through that very same sound like that the treatment of as well like after creating all this business that might have left like the end of the laboratory and might have entered into that not of might have been what might have happened. Certainly might have been so like it might have been only once like 11 like after like hearing that all the those and the sound that's stopping 11 might have felt that it is scary place of not dog and that's the last so like and so it might be only at that point that like 11 might have opened that the door to the boat and slowly and steadily might have escape through that the found out of that and of the level. We might have been what might have happened in like the very beginning. Definitely my prevention. This might be the reason for like in like the very beginning itself that even being so extremely yeah of like the cases amount of even from like the very beginning. Definitely my preference because like everyone might have gone through such scenario where like the case not even back then like the moment it might have entered into like kind of the level it might have chased after price and price in that chapter and everyone might have barely escaped. So therefore, I'm definitely my brain option right now. And for next the message to delay that time. He wants to that. The other thing he wants to, in the real world to use that build what to be sees. And I don't think that's that. But they have stated in my book revision with the more definitely a message from the lineup and no won't be at all a message from that the Saramon just to that really it's definitely my book revision. So I could definitely be definitely think about the my book revision like and really putting it run up and like what you see like to build what is good and what we need the real world really at that point when the scene would be like not only like the parallel version of the movie but I'm thinking that might have been like the bad version of that might do that among those group of people that actually had seen in at that point in the night like there might have been among those group of people like there might have been Owen there might have been Bob there might have been like the fan version of Owen like there might have been like the fan version of that Hopper there might have been like the fan version of Michael and Dustin and maybe even with it's also like a from of the academy there might have been Barbara with them there might have been Nancy and Jonathan and there might have been George like some like group of might have been like the group of people that we might have seen, but like I'm looking like things like it was like the fan version video that had talked to a continental range that talked to like the real world video at that point and his focus might have solely fall on to like the fan version of video and that message. But even though kids still Billy might have seen like the remaining group of people behind like the fan version of Billy, but like Billy might not be that much aware of it, like of like how much of that close to the people that are standing behind like the fan version video that like the real world Billy has seen. So like I'm doing like after a few days, like I'm doing like Billy will get slowly just like a message to say don't make contact Billy and like the real world Billy and so I'm remembering that scene of that message instead of that message, and eventually slowly the memories getting sharper for like the real world feeling. Like he will be like slowly like remember like the people that he had seen of like the group of people that was like behind the bad version feeling at that point, and him recognizing my like look up and stuff and often like with scenario that I'm using right, and this will be called like I'm going to this will be only a message that sent to like to me by that Pranav. Certainly not because like definitely all these people will be to live in a mental friends will be part of like Pranav like current army of that individual who might have been in the form and might have had the gain superpowers like that they continue to cause and everything. It's definitely not true. So like I'm from that one among them, like I'm different maybe it might have been like the fan version of the through and each of them would be different maybe like the common factor of that common power that each of that those individuals would be fan version of individuals would be having. So might have been through an experiment might be like the common power of that telekinesis, the superpower of telekinesis, but like when it comes to like the other powers like and different like to be different like exactly like how in the case of Canny it's like hallucination creation powers for like Kelly, like element is like empathy powers like on different that and like that just to get the backward powers like and something like that way the secondary powers would be like different for like the individuals and like first group of like the army of like the front version of individuals and like the real world of like that army which might be from the army in like definitely different. So definitely like one of those army like the parallel really might have like the power to access the dark void. So like I'm point like at that point like Pranav like the person like might have felt that urgently to like seek the help from like the real world to create like huge army of like the real world versions of like these exact individuals and basically and that way it will like collectively form a huge army and that way it will like fight and surrender the entire amount of else like the real world would be such a extreme high and danger of like getting fully consumed not the money the amount of it but like and that is the real world the being fully consumed by the bad world and we turned into another bad world would be something for enough right now 50% from the bad world would be visibly able to see as that actually danger. There's definitely my preparation for that. But I will be like might be probably extensively observing like if there is a moment like the kind of might have been over the past year. It's definitely not been done right now and Pranav might have been working side by side in parallel as like the shadow method was like continuously making it move out of the past year like Pranav as well might have been the same time might have been putting in all the hard work and experimenting and on these individuals and making them gain like the superpowers so that to eventually be able to like bring down like any different challenge and say so might be able to situation with like another item definitely not very much so definitely especially with like the fact that like uh this now as like the real world really has gotten that message from like the parallel really like the fact that like uh the what really was seeing was like the parallel world uh along with like the parallel really and like the group of people behind like the parallel really since like the real world really had seen like the parallel world around him. Like I'm looking like since like still even at that point like since there were that set array of like lampposts that basically of like lights even in like the parallel world at that point great number of like lights even in that in an arrangement of like behind like the real world to be at that point in like the parallel world. So I'm considering that even while believers see the real world believers in the parallel world, that I'm considering that it would be due to like institutional as a premise that like at that point what really like that location of really might have been uh or like the exact location that Billy had seen might have been the exact location that like Will had basically seen that the season two Will had seen during that Halloween that exact location that Will had of like the fan world that Will had seen back then. Where there as well like Will had only seen in the fan world there being just like create number of lampposts like lights like array of arranged light surrounded by absolute darkness, with like there being absolutely no other source of light, but only this like set array of light that is never arranged pattern. Like even that set of like light, this might be lamp, this is like leading to like the base where like in like the person will be hiding in like the bad word is just the mind of the impression and doing is like experiencing like the bad word is definitely when the impression definitely this might be one of attempt to laboratory to have an understanding as to like how can the mind will send this message to be the understanding like might have improved like since among like the army that so far like has created like a consumer mission like the one among them would be like and those group of people like one among them being like the battle version of to be understanding like definitely what my friends might have told like the bad version, they might have been to the access the dark word, that make the bad version believe might have like about to throw another friend might have been like about like access the dark word, so like that way. Friend might have told like the bad version to lead to then search for that like original version, electoral word version. So definitely I'm doing that way like the fan version believe might have access to the dark word and might have found like the exactly by sheer concentration like the bad version believe might have access to the dark word and found like the real world to be like at that point I'm doing that which might have you might have seen like the situation which like the real world to be causing by sheer concentration exactly during that time and getting tracked into that zone of that definitely might have been by the definitely attacked by like the particle of like the shadow definitely yet like I'm between one flag with the survive that attack like I'm at that point I'm also very like from the like the band version of really might have said all these things that we see so that the real world really going through the last word to at that point. But I think what might happen. So like for at that point like might have told like the bad version of Lily to like use this powers to like create this like and I'm so the one of the unique powers like the bad version of Lily will be having to send such a remote message to another person. Even without like the hardware like the bad version of Lily will be also through another experience might have gained powers unique powers through which like Lily might have created like this like whole uh, imagery for like the real world imagery image kind of like a message to like such a message to like in a remote manner from like the dark world from like the bad world to like the real world to me. And that message might have been how like the might have been through like the bad version of the famous power that might have given real world to like message to like the real world to me as like him seeing like the you might be able to like decide like what are he wants like validation to be using for might be able to have the power to like decide what it is that like that message like what is it that the validation to be wants like the real world to need to like see what is like message. So certainly that way like the bad version of Billy might have created such a message where like the real world Billy will be seen like the bad version actually uh, interacting to him while in like the background like in while right behind the bad version Billy like the bad version Billy might have created like the thing like that message might have created like the remaining thing and that was like kind of as like a group and might have delivered that to like the as like a message, which might be what like the real world thing might have been. So certainly might have been very important by that. So like I'm was group of people like I'm looking like that was like standing behind like the bad version of the fight the bad version of the delivered the message. Like I'm looking like one of the best group of among those group of people like one of them might have been also run up as well. The team might have been so definitely that we have to be that the drones message like go up to that permanent like the individuals in like the computer and basically told them like and something like that is like it like really save the student as like what we really had seen to them like at that point so that like basically since like the group of people most likely would be like the group of people like there will be most likely like Joyce of might represent a statement and things like they already have like the knowledge of that like of like the password and like the monsters and figuring that and so just really going up to them and telling them about that the message that they have seen that alone would be instantly making them those remaining group of like microtransactions and enjoy them and pop up and do it like all of them instantly realize that like still like the still fact that like Hawkins and humanity is still under like the range of like the Battleborn and the Shadow to like to make them realize that as soon as possible before like things will be getting out of hand for not like Hawkins but for like that through Hawkins like what is in that here with the real world would be what like would be right now I can get through delivery such a message to that the real world might have been what kind of pattern that needs to so like they showed like according to my presentation was like the band version of like giving the message to like the real world to me to like to build what that he sees like and that way the message will be for like to be to like go up to like the people in like the background of that the group of people that you saw Michael and of things like Nancy on the end to get across one of them and they need to exchange information that way that all of them exchange information and forming that as group and once again reuniting and forming that as army that has so far like in season one as well as to have sort of experience against like uh, again like the Harold Ward and like the Shadow Mode. Like once again like this week that them having to through that exchange of information and everything, that once again, like if they act right now, like they will still have a chance to like stop one day stop like the concept that the shadow marker will be what like to be trying to through the trying to get the information towards like how front of it right now. So this message might be the event kind. So like the flea might put ambitions are like on that gone on where like it might have the flea like the shadow monster that might have been trying to like capture and spread and take control of like the real world really like it's good like when Philly had really saved himself from like the door and like straight out of the door on like at that point I'm like Philly might have actually prevented like in not even like the remote of bit of like spreading of like the particle of like the shadow monster into the was definitely what might have happened exactly the minimum for so like even like the person by belief is like okay kind of like in a to a certain extent feels like affected by sunlight and everything. It would be totally to relax that absolute shock of like that seeing that message and that whole incident of like being interacting with like the grown up and everything during like the night time like something affecting belief to like such levels that only that trauma that will be causing that we need to like feel as if like things like we are affected by like sunlight when in actuality definitely in like the person that leaves where we are willing to your spreading of like the shadow of that particular point to like to and when we will be talking about that we find it naturally in like the person is definitely my different. So like the name and differentiation right now of like going predicting that there is as well as like this girl to like really telling to take her to him like I'm hurt by him like I'm talking like what the odds would be like hallucination creating power which like I'm talking it's like how uh Cali has like hallucination creating powers like I'm talking like maybe for like the individual who would be currently working for like 11 like right now in like unless like secretly in like the band but like for those individuals like who live up in like or not going for example an experiment that might have been over for about like there might be individuals who will be having superpower to create like hallucinate to large people to create remote hallucination to that individuals in that real world of definitely manipulate. And this would be exactly it might be exactly what we are happening right now. For real world failure right now. Definitely manipulation. Like it will be all the flag just one spreading to police arm as well as like the other that like telling police to take up to him like by him like I'm 2020 all runner doing and like by him like another way only talking about lack of it, definitely like great. Because like as one of us for getting this like information about like the danger in which like pocket to points will be of like extreme high priority for like one right now. Definitely my able to and then due to the purpose of like the sound of the like definitely would be situation where it would be totally impossible for like runner uh, uh, for like neither runner of any of this like experiments to like attempt to like for themselves like or to like the real world and inform the real world about the dangers uh, that like the real world and that is the real world and how it is right now. It's definitely not important. So like to inform to get this information of like the danger like how can this points as soon as possible like I'm bring that on my to be ordering that one of the like subjects to like use like that remote hallucination powers and basically that will be what will be right now happening to like the world's real world really that can be spreading against and all the like to totally that way force really to like not teach or to like do anything else other than to like get this like things like in this whole situation like this whole information about like the things that will be have seen like basically and have experienced right now, which that would be totally instantly relatable to just like those exact people I know like once as well as all the team of author Joy and like everyone that might be just kind of all gone through such like such like experience of like the whole situation was like a bad one and everything good things it's that only them alone that will be able to like realize what's going on with that really so like that way to like get really good words like to have really context to that around like the things they need like experience so that like actually they could like realize that like the fucking the shadow monster is still on the move and like fucking like things are like to be able to have this happen as soon as possible, like and like believe from this point on having more and more such like visual hallucinate that which will be done remotely by like the experience subjects of like the bad work. It's like the scenario that I'm looking. So like I'm looking like the visual hallucinations of work really it's only starting to increase more and more at setting worse and worse to like the point of like should be like really going up to most likely like intelligently totally recognizing that when that message of the group of people like they only recognizing the face of either uh, eventually trying to recollect the memory, and at that point that release of Theory, realizing that that's like having another group of people ensure that message has having seen like space of either Jonathan or like Nancy or like Steve as well made. So that way I'm actually probably absolutely really searching for like either Jonathan Nancy or like maybe Steve, and like and I'm getting more sure about it that maybe it being like Steve that like I believe would be that remember it as like being the face among the group of people. So in that message, so like believe of you that's really searching for Steve, and I'm going to like believe by the time Billy will be finding Steve like I'm that trusting will be totally along with that Steve. And I'm going to Billy will be totally telling Steve about everything that he's going through, and I'm looking like Steve will be like essentially Steve and Custom totally finding that the behavior of like uh, the behavior of that really extremely weird and basically but like I'm going to have more and more really would be telling about like what we have experienced to Steve. Like I'm looking at that point, I'm looking at things probably adding up what Custom as well as Steve at that point. And basically let them realizing the situation and basically then getting that information to others, like the scenario that I'm looking at the thing. So there's like the minimum prevention right now is like 11 right now breaking up with that mic. And even though 11 like only doing that solely to have like mic coming back things or like I'm trying things talking back for the both of them. It's like the scenario that I was like I'm just saying that right now I'm just saying that the just will be state of like the mindset to laterally to like totally let go of the tendency to like go back to like the more like the next day and to once again to a more like a travel fit just to like find like the perfect story item for like 11 to catch up thing with like 11 would be along the lines of like the mindset and like the stand of like Lucas but like I'm thinking like things totally backfiring at that point or even Lucas were like my first stand right now I'm just saying it will only different because like I'm the Mike would be right now getting this like ego in like the way ego getting stuff and this become totally like with like 11 right now. And Mike will be taking what elements like current breakup with like Mike like I'm sitting like Mike will be okay taking that extremely seriously even though 11 like that okay it's not serious about like the breakup like I'm sitting like Mike totally thing that usually not just Mike but like I'm sitting Lucas as well as like when you totally think that that breakup by 11 is something that 11 did seriously the element of repression. So definitely I'm looking that at that point like while Lucas will be telling Mike that basically that like they would definitely be able to like do thorough search and find the perfect story either for like 11 and the Mike at that point like taking so stand that is really not going to do that like so like Mike ego getting the way like I'm saying like Michael at that point telling Lucas and with that I feel like how much like even though like Michael get on the thing along the lines of like basically Michael get pointing out to like Lucas at that point telling Lucas to like as for like back from all the way back from like the days where they had first found 11 at like market for since then like it was the fact that it was Mike that had basically took care of that 11 and basically was like the only person to like support 11 even while Lucas and like doesn't all the plane kept on playing 11 from like the beginning. It was only Mike alone that stood beside 11 and support of 11 and he did the fact that Mike did all that and right now Black 11 in such an intuitive manner like had broken up with like Mike that's about Mike only saying pointing out all the fantasy like to like Lucas and saying that basically definitely Mike is not going to like say sorry to that 11 and Mike I'm telling Lucas that basically and I'm also maybe at that point that will maybe telling Mike why Mike would be waiting up through such a manner to that Lucas would be like remaining consistent silent. Like I'm maybe going at that point casually telling Mike how Black maybe still how many times like Eleven had saved like literally saved like the life of Black Mike and all of them. Like basically Jack I'm will adding this by Mike will be waiting out and that I'm that will be I think Mike is even more and Mike will be getting angry at like Will and like telling me to like to that not to that decided to that along the lines I'm sorry. So like I'm the print just being that the stand that Mike should be taking and like I'm looking at Mike telling to the plugin instead of buying a soaring it for 11 that what Mike will be doing with okay, so like suddenly go on with his like as like a normal and basically like at that point like eventually 11 will be ending up slowly starting to that much Mike more and more after days pass when basically and that at that point, I was doing that my trading those of value basically 11 would be feeling extremely sad and 11 would be maybe starting to that. end up searching this app that 11 would be that starting to left right. The date of more and more date of like 11 would be totally starting to left right. And that pop-up would be totally at that point seeing this, and basically at that point that pop-up itself would be that Felix 11 has for like on realizing about like separate of like pop-up itself would be that Felix 11 the truth that that basically is saying pop-up like the reason for like Mike even having like to that 11, and that way like at that point Silver would be totally redirecting that breaking up the mic, and basically it would be totally feeling bad at that point. And at that point, like it would be totally phoning Mike and telling sorry to like Mike and pleading Mike to that show uh, that the house of that pop. And basically that way that comes to that Mike telling Lucas at that way. And that way, like 11 himself would be saying that absolute sorry to like Mike and get back the person who had broken 11 who have right now broken up with like Mike husband like saying sorry it's like the right thing, and they really come like would be actually definitely would be clearing to like have Mike back to be to get back into that relationship. Mike would be along the lines of Mike in an all confident man of would be telling Lucas at that point. It's like the scenario that I was like, but like Lucas would be totally uh would be feeling against that stand of Mike, but like a different that Mike being that kind of in an embrace manner that like Lucas would be only being that nothing he would be telling Mike would be even be able to like get through to Mike. Definitely not different. You know that Lucas having way more kind of like an experience being in that relationship with like than Mike, especially sold into like the restrictions like of her place point like Mike and all that in that time from the husband. So like I'm looking at Lucas will be only saying that or say that like it wouldn't just be 11 I don't like the more Mike and 11 stays apart. It wouldn't just be 11 I don't like he's starting to like say that up inside that starting like Mike and will be starting to like suffer. But like Mike as well should be that he will be starting to suffer in like that from the other would be one thing that like it should be absolutely but next floor yeah like I'm like it should be also absolutely it should be a bit obvious problem to study because currently with like the current situation is like Mike would be there would be nothing that is able to like help Mike to make understand it's definitely my difference. So like Lucas only remains inside of this that scenario that I'm studying and that way so that way I'm also bring like with that 11 as well as like Maxine like smiling there where back like driving back from the bus like from like the mall like I'm definitely 11 as well as that Maxine like right now I'm considering Maxine very clear that is still giving that confidence of confidence to 11 and telling 11 that like to that keep to maintain that distance and eventually like Mike himself would be like showing up to 11's home telling sorry to 11 and constantly like why he lied to that 11 and everything would be along the lines that Maxine would be talking that often to 11 and Maxine has been talking telling 11 that will be until then like they can like only have a girl's time and basically can like often come to like the mall and like, have a great time like the mall mostly to get on the lines of like a plan that might be with the like 11 and 11 is the straight way agree. And so that way like I'm trying them forming that plan to like basically to without hope of finding out like for like today on like hope of basically for job to have for like matching to like a weekly job like 11 and basically for them both to like head on to like the mall and have a great time. So like I'm doing this happening and I'm looking like 2 or 3 days like I'm doing happening. But like I'm doing things like right now, even like the situation of like offer being like basically due to like the mayor flying like offer being in like a situation where like offer having to like get rid of like the protesters protesting outside the mayor's office. Like I'm doing like this for I'm doing like this since according to my organization for like like offer even though it's finger like in these still I'm like offer like the clash probably happening and with like offer bring about like one of the like principles and is like them like forcefully getting rid of like the sort of stuff like the scenario that I'm delivering and that ending up being getting being part of like the news and like the filming of talking like the scenarios that I'm like so that ending up in like the news and like the entirety of like the talking like basically like would be instantly for the news article will be easily uh, that instant is like understanding that will be forming within like the middle of your presentation of that happens at that point is like on seeing like the news self towards like shut of how it's also one of the different so like with that new uh, that information like of like focus action being all over the news like I'm doing that because it's great delay like and it's like that point of work connected to like the more like connected to the more like I'm 20,000 period like I'm next the coming next or like the day after next day, I'm looking like considering like there to be like a record of showing up to like the mall and basically to just talk to like the people around people who will be like visiting like the mall to like basically ask for like their experience in like the mall and asking questions that would like if they what their stand about like the protest and basically if they want like the mall to be remote or if they want like the mall to like be there in that topic or not like even so like that kind of almost showing up in like the coming days and basically and that when I was like 11 as well as like 9 would be like once again like having on time in like the mall and would be on their way to like exiting like the mall. Like the moment they would be exiting like the mall like and like them getting caught in like the camera of like a report back and like a report of like bringing the mic towards like 11 and asking 11 about like what a standard thing. So like 11 I'm in a conscious man of that having any ideas. Like I'm simply saying like the mall today, like basically the mall is great, like it's not a better thing. And like in a place to be fairly probably in a careless manner would be forgetting about like was being like a news reporter and basically 11 space that way like those are the manner of like interacting the TV reporter like basically 11 like things will be shown on TV and all of like I think up last 11 11 would have absolutely no ideas about like the range of and even answering to that kind of program that way ending up on like TV or anything like about it's like 11 we would have absolutely no knowledge at all. But like even by snacking will be having that knowledge and it's in that remember during 19 at that point would be like a careless man who will be forgetting about that after the danger that answering to that other even phones for like 11 and 11 even like the consequence of like that being 11 showing up on TV and everything. So that maximum will be only forgetting about all of that such pains of existing and only maximum will be actually like interacting around with like 11 to let the report and that they will be actually leaving. But like understanding that on the very on that very day that on the news channels and what like 11 like answers to like the reporters would be that would be what would be shown on like TV that they are going to bring like elements like pastry getting shown on like TV on the news and basically that way like I'm going to even careers like system by changing like the channel or like careers that by watching TV like I'm going to be like switching to like the channel and they'll be getting the biggest shock and seeing that element on TV that the news being shown on TV like the scenario that I'm so like careers will be even more so at that point it also like the scenario that I'm looking at and that way like I'm that that way I was calling that that 11 having survived like this crucial information and the like reaching all the way even to like the energy level breaking or mentioning through this like 11 phase spreading through this like and use just like feeling the phenomenon that I'm looking at like the nuclear. Okay, so like the mention right now for like Joe's also right now excitedly going out for like the dates of like Joe's like I'm delivering definitely Joe's definitely not so not also showing up like scenarios that I'm and so like I'm looking that to offer like getting that pretty extreme disappointment in like Joe's not even showing up or even failing of warning and failing off of that like you couldn't make it. So definitely not the temperature so that I'm looking that would be such an absolute disappointment and I would be frustrated up to that extreme by the time forward because we are returning back home this like the scenario that I'm looking at, right? And definitely I'm looking that to be like a scenario which isn't lectures right now. Has like gone up to like the professor class and there are like a different popular class as well. You might have definitely noticed that the magnet that actually sprays just like one possible scenario that I'm going for, like the possible scenario that I'm looking for like the steady spreading of like the underground side on throughout like the past year that might have not reached like the area where like the house of that the plant might be. So like maybe like the magnets and like the plant house might be working perfectly. It's like the property that is regardless of the different like this whole interaction between that choice and the plant and going on and on until late night is like definitely another that I'm going because like definitely choice of we don't have that extreme fear and would be the afraid to like ensure that we see that the magnet acting springs that have absolutely nothing to do with like the parameter or like the variable to ensure that like I'm putting the make choice right now would be for having that has to like disturb feeling and like those like biggest priority right now would be to like ensure that like it has like the magnet and like the variable have absolutely nothing to do to like get that clarity to that like until that point that it is would be feeling as like we won't be able to like at all have any peace at all. The limit is to like future most likely being such a situation for them those are the things that's probably forgotten at all probably forgotten about like a date or like some meeting with that pop-up and like no. and everything. Definitely might go to temperature too. Like that way on the like pop up totally returning back from the hotel feeling like kind of extremely disappointed and prepared man of the like scenario that I was right. And I was like not even bothering. Uh Probably feeling breakdown, feeling enraged and disappointed that like I won't be like feeling like chronic joys at all. Even like half half like why couldn't show up to like at all and she even felt for that she didn't be like major and all that that was enough that I was right. And then the like maybe that next morning like that pop up will be receiving a call from Joy. And at that point, like Hawk will be in that talking to Joyce in that kind of like an updated manner. But like I'm listening, might be at that point that like I'm looking at whole Joyce like Hawk will be getting that shocking revelation of like the possibility of that the town of Hawkins that still possibly the whole fight against like the town of the street on being over as the town of Hawkins that still possibly potentially being still in danger of them starting to the back. But like this that possibility that can like Joyce will be like Nespresso man up would be like stealthily without having to really find out about it that movie or like Jonathan or anyone find out about it. So just stealthily calling Hopper and telling Hopper as like scenario that about the public thing. And Michael Julian. Okay, so like the Cleveland Friends right now, but like the Cincinnati that it's a week long that the people get here when like the don't yellow in like the West like like what might be like the meaning behind it might be I'm referring first of all like the week long might be referring to definitely that 1 year deadline that was given to that scientist in like the energy lab in like Russia by the by that like military person like I'm looking definitely that I'm referring that there will be only one more week left for like that 1 year deadline to be over. Might be that the situation with tech scientists right now. It's like the possibility that I'm considering right now. One of the multiple possibilities that I'm considering right now. So like the situation for like that scientist would be if like that scientist isn't able to in the energy level or like not able to complete like the just like experiment to like open like the gate in like the energy laboratory in Russia that if he's not able to do that in a week, then we can that we would that 1 week will be like right. And so again, it's not it depends not or able to like open the gate within 1 week like not taking but like people who are like perfect school that science that will might be getting eliminated might be the threat that he will that will be posing to like the scientists is definitely mandatory enrichment. So definitely there will be that exact 1 year deadline will be having a lot of relevance for like the silver cat because like I'm if the gate is not open in exactly within like 1 week, I'm considering like there will be there might possibly be serious consequence for like the silver cat will be like failure. Definitely by the premise. Silver cat will be suffering to like the lyric. So like the silver cat might be suffering to like the lyric is wants to like survive then like basically the then like basically the blow leads to image with like the yellow in like the west. So like the yellow in like the west would be most likely referring to like 11. So like 11 like superpowers like and like 11 like telekinetic powers within which like 11 has opened like the gate within like one of the laboratory. So like currently I'm thinking there would be the flow would be referring to most likely one of that runners like fast paced experiments who could be right now in like the captivity in like the energy level uh, uh, in like okay, might be the case with the particular experiment. So like I'm giving that deadline in like the past like of that 1 year for like the scientists in like the past like but like in might have eventually maybe I'm looking at remote procedure right now like that flow might be reference to Cali. So like maybe it might have been like a situation where like after like splitting up to like when like Cali and like Cali's like hope of team like they might have kept on that doing their missions and might have done more robberies and might have created more issues and might have ended up in more trouble and might have even ended up getting their identities forced and might have ended up with like their faces showing up in that things might have been what might have happened like the criminal incident. So that way once like Gary's face might have ended up in like a second then someone might have recognized Gary as like a failed experiment of like another might be the case of the belief and particularly like that way, like someone might have lived, and that person might be also connected to that to some man of to that scientist thing, like you know, like seem like connected to given that one being outside, like might be the case with being different. So like that way, I'm also maybe Charlie might have been from that way, I'm also maybe Charlie might have been that way, might have been affected by like the forces and might have been transported to like kind of level between like since then I'm like Charlie might have been forced to like use a Pelican superpower to like open up the gate in like the Mozilla game, but I see the gate definitely not the members. So definitely even like 11 managing to like open up like the gate in like the symbol in like another level. Even that as well might be something that like might take might that might be necessary condition that may be required for like 11 to even be able to like put in such powers of like Pelican's powers to like open up the gate. Like opening up the gate might not be something even for like 11 will be able to do in a casual manner. Certainly, there will be way more effort required to like open up the gate as well as closing the gate, which like 11 would be only able to do only one like the situation will be that much extreme. Definitely my favorite. So like I'm that even in like the beginning, even in opening up like the gate in like the December it might have been a situation uh where like such situation of like an absolute threat might have been kind of like a feeling might have been in a realistic man might have been created within like 11 by like one of the kind of without kind of norms might have been working happen. So scientists might have that way might have created like kind of like a front like feeling and might have uh, that way forced and might have created like fear within that 11 to like the point of like so that for example like 11 might have unleashed out like all that power hidden within like 11 to be able to like open up the gate within like something else developing like the office of and even when it came to that closing of like the gate uh, towards the end of season two as well. And definitely that as well might have been one thing that might have been offered for Neptune solely due to like the situation being that much strange, a critical situation like that. But it might be the situation alone that might have made it possible for like anyone to unleash out more of like 11 7 pounds to even be able to like close such an extremely huge scale beneath like the number. Definitely my friend, so definitely. So like that might be what might have happened with the past. So like I'm saying like what might have happened in like, the past year might have been that way through that Cali space showing up in like things like the electro scientists in like the laboratory in Russia and like might have abducted like Cali and might have brought Cali to send forces to like abduct Cali and might have brought Cali to like turn up the laboratory and since then like another Cali might have exposed to like use Pelican superpower to that to open up the gate, which like the conductor of the what they might have been like the certainly one mentioned like and something like that as like how like they might have forced Kelly to like do it might have been they might have also around like Kelly might have also abducted like the friends of Kelly that property of that Kelly as well and might have threatened Kelly to like eliminate the if that Kelly doesn't do that. So like that way that Kelly might have been forced to like open up the gate uh, definitely my impression. Like Cali might have been making significant progress, but still I'm pretty like even like I'm by the time like the thing has gotten like this like message browser report like I'm doing. So that time like I'm like exactly a single week might have been remaining for like that 1 year deadline to be over. And even that point like I'm saying even while Cali all my have might have been making far significant progress in that the procedure of like the process of like opening the gate than like the progress that like scientists with like to like ultimate fields giant particular kind of like machine that they have created that try to like open the gate like even way more superior progress than that huge machine that Cali might have made in that opening up the gate. But still I'm looking that the process still might have not been completed and like the gate still might not be fully open at all. Definitely my 300 for them to be able to like enter like the language. It's still 1 week, even to the 1 week onward, within the plan still even while condition of as much as you can like still not being able to like open up the gate might be the option to do it. Definitely my friend. So let's just message would be talking about like that 1 week deadline and basically about like the lead that survival, this survival, like they are all the team, like the scientists and everyone they are like they are survival depending on like the survival of the leader and basically that survival of that leader depending on like that they like the parallel being able to be opened within that before like that 1 week deadline that would be like the remaining just like will be ending up being over. So like before that like I'm saying that the blue when like the blue meets with like the yellow in like the west like by the yellow and like the west they will be only around to 11 but like they would also think that 11 is like no more and then had been that sort of eliminated like half of the along the line like only people will be left and the thing might be the case actually not different. So like once that the blue meets with that yellow might be referring to once like carries superpowers will be growing and reaching once they are able to like grow carries like superpowers through forcing candy, when it's through forcing candy, only once the candy super you're reaching the point of the 12 levels of strength of yellow, it will be 11 candy will be able to open up the gate to let the bad good that nothing about it. And but there might be what they will be only thinking through this policy. So definitely my consideration, but under the condition, about my consideration skills only speaking to my consideration for even though there was not a huge clash in of attempts to stop the protest the defense still the thing that the eventually I'm the thing this whole protest and everything what situation with the mall everything all that probably being a huge bigger and bigger issue in that pocket that I'm eventually with and with 11 right now totally spending time with maxing is probably care of them element to the mall and this could eventually result in 11 and getting from in one of the as one of the user reporters would be asking questions to the random small visitors I'm putting one of the reporters casually asking 11 about the mall and about the percent and that way 11 answering to that and basically that way space ending up on television and they feel that way at that point this scientist from the technology level yeah I'm just trying that way finding out about 11 activities and the scenario right that way at that point I'm just trying it would be scenario where only 2 or 3 days alone would be remaining for 1 week to be over, which would be exciting. It's trade. So it would be during that time that I'm total level space turning up on TV input for me finding out still arrives. So I'm traders then telling post to catch up and up and bring element to then we'll have a bring in Russia to open up the gate. Uh, given the scenario setup. And that way, elements for ending up in an extremely dangerous kind of a situation. Both with since I'm going to my prevention right now, the band world itself, underground will be already grown, spreading more and more within the Ramapodu. But opposite the Ramapodu is being in danger, and that 11 as well being in ending up in a separate threat and dangerous kind of situations with due to that beer and the sign in the energy level in corruption and all that. Even the scenario that I'm always having in the series of kind of things that into the app and them. Okay, so what name and films on the things secret is code message having the fake music as badge of in come out but something it wouldn't be just a message from Hawking, but I'm different as we would be getting, but it would definitely be an exact message that might have a total understand from exactly that very same mall itself in helping the team of the players. So definitely it wouldn't even be a message that is McDonald outside from the mall, but never might use that country that was not exactly the same that there is a mall set to definitely not friends. So right now the friend a Robin would be a Russian spy. It's definitely different. So Robin, the fact that Robin knows that the Russian can play the fact that Robin knows Russian and the fact that Robin is so extremely sound and when it comes to even though the conversation between Steve and Dustin was a careless one without I think that makes them not keeping ensuring to keep their voice down to the extreme levels still emphasizing the fact that even from the moment that Dustin has sold and revealed to Steve about this movie and since that point itself that the fact that Rosen is basically totally saying that he is actively listening to it and this it has totally for that basically and since then have not sort of left the side of of the left definite Robin totally just by hearing such a random message will from so much of an instant curiosity to that message would be all due to that Robin totally being part of the recent fight post that might have been sent to Black Hawkins to most likely because the leak uh, from the of the laboratory in they might have got leaked information about about it still being alive. It definitely might be the case by the brain. So definitely I'm bring that way I'm bring it's five also might have been spent to Hawkins to figure out where exactly the level is. They did Hawkins this whole kind of everything solely due to that reason I don't that. They might have even the Russian players might have that struggle to find 11. Certainly what might happen is communal connection. So certainly I'm just trying Robin even working at that ice cream shop as well. basically or will be part of that just like Robin and like Robin will be talking faking that like American accent. It's definitely my preference like Robin will be talking something right so definitely I'm preferring like it would just be Robin like in multiple Russian forces like in the like in that mall like would be presenting like that mall. So that absolute disguise like every day. Definitely my preference. So definitely. So like it might be one among the team that might have sent this message as well from that amount as well. Definitely which like report might have got that message from that amount. It might be how it might have happened in the mistake. So like it might have been from exactly right in front of that point post like that has this music like I'm putting like it might be right in front of that point post like that and it's like just one of the reference by might have recorded this message. Definitely my preference. But like what might have totally gone totally unexpected happened unexpected then it might have been definitely Dustin Professor lecturer info like picking up that message. But still, but like Dustin even after like managing to like get hold of that message Professor lecturer like on the command of the back and like straight away sort of the Steve of all people like whom with whom like Robin most likely would be a Russian prime minister networking with that. So definitely that way to like not have that message of like Dustin like no get leaked to like anybody else would use the exact reason for like Robin always like Robin has sort of and basically so speak about like this message like at that point will back Robin definitely because she's like might be like up to fight to have that sharp ears at all times so like she might have instantly from like the moment she had heard of it like I'm like she might have stuck her even sticking around Steve and up and not even moving at all it will definitely still do the exact reason to like ensure that like the message doesn't get gets leaked out of that from Tuscan of Steve. Be the exact reason to like what Robin will be planning would be to like without much great delay to like basically to that kind of a like plan behind even helping Steve as well as Tuscan decode the material and everything and showing all the interest and everything to be definitely to create this exact situation where like right now since like the situation is like Steve in that mode currently I think like if they just keep Dustin as well as like Robert alone I think are presenting like the mode right I think that they are exit now the mode for that like they can do that Steve and Dustin to that way to like have like with that aspect like have like Steve and Dustin and to transport Steve and Dustin to that kind of level in like Russia and there and to then decide what to do with like Steve Anderson would be that Robin's plan is definitely going to be very interesting. So like right now that from the range of like for Steve and Steve figuring out that basically the message it's like what from like talking like right now it's from preparing like the reveal of that Robin being Russian spy would be getting a reveal for 2003 and it's like personality because like right now it's like Steve and Dustin it's like shocking thing that they have like a huge lead like right now it's like on like that exact Russian spy who had recorded the message like I'm saying like that guy like right now will be walking up towards that like personality that I'm like from within that mall. So like at that point, like Steve as well as Dustin with only Softman care thing and the spring like at that point itself is when I was like Robin from beside them like walking up towards and basically standing right next to that Russian fight. And basically it was like a villain 6 mile and then it was like Robin's taking away her disguise and then it was like Robin's like hair I think like it's like what might be probably definitely not different like Robin and the friend of like they will be having that black color hair. Definitely not very much that in that way it was like a realistic smile, like taking off of the disguise and like totally speaking in English to that both Steve as well as something what's with some sort of a Russian accent. It's like the scenario that I'm doing, and that means that's an ultimate twist for like for Steve as well as person. It's like the scenario that I'm doing, and definitely have a friend by now, certainly as it happens like on this very day since that uh due to like Maxine that when having open like the role of like of actually having to like come on. Definitely I'm a friend that definitely even not only showing up to like the mall but also even showing up to the ice cream shop of Steve like I'm different like definitely Robin and like the other like five agents from that but will be present in this guy's all across like it's a mall would have all seen 11. So like I'm looking that with that the last scene of 11 being like happy 11 as well as like after like breaking up with like Mike and breaking Mike like with like happy 11 as well as like night scene getting on to the bus like I'm doing like I'm going to like the moment 11 might have got out that was itself like 11 might have gone something like might have been what might have happened and that as well itself might have been what might have happened so this might be the episode definitely I'm looking that way. Element fit into like an kind of like situation, so like the scenario that I'm looking for it, and like along with like speed and the same just like in the scenario that I'm looking at. What will be most likely stopping Element from like not retaliating or like not trying to bring herself would be definitely the photo of my and basically that threat by like those Russian spy cables that basically is like relevant when they're using up superpower and retaliate then like mice would be that eliminator for the them that I said in that way that relevant would be that already by now would be like an kind of situation where exactly I'm going to like the and steel would be brought and put into that exact scope where like relevant would be like in kind of like situation where like all this like spy agents and the people that would be planning on like deciding like the exact time to like transport like three of them to like the energy level if like Russia might be like the case, might be like reflecting in the scenario that I'm looking for like eventually happening within the series of like strange of things like to break without necessarily reflecting in the scenario that I'm looking. Okay, so like the human dimension right now, because like the real world media right now, are thinking that they're entering up to like that go on like that person that will be waiting there for that go on will be like literal enough, definitely like the real world for enough. And just like group of like this like team of like versions of leaders of like the whole group of like Mike and Popper and all of them like their parallel versions, a lot of their parallel versions would be like the current group of like Paranas team and through Brenner experiment, Brenner experimenting on them, like they would all be parallel versions, and like through Brenner experimenting on them, like they would all have paid like shit about thinking about using the pitch that would be how that they might ultimately they have had to track belief into that program and destroy like the directories as well as like track them might have been through like the helping superpowers when they might interact really turn towards like the program like that definitely might be very interesting. So like the program would be right now in the present would be like the phase of like one of as well as like the team and like two and and there are two goals like bring down to ensure like the to bring down and eliminate sections like shadow motion before like too late and this late before it's too late for talking when like the rest of the activity like the real world would be like the danger the full extent of danger going to like whether we absolutely aware of. And so like due to that reason I'm like would be like it could even be about like any details for at this point like it would be about like survival and survival alone for like right now. So like on top of that survival would be having this thing that we have that you know other option but to like ensure to like eliminate the amount of so not to do that like would be having that create that piece of that superhumans to like superpowers similar to that of like eleven. So like not to do that like I'm making my idea right now. Probably using like the real world it's certainly my requirement so like other than saying it might be solely just like in like runner that like both at the villain manner like through like controlling the like in a post manner like basically by attacking people like basically trying to like you know, create this like huge army get this like trained to like eliminate create an army of to like eliminate the maybe the games that so like my questions are like given that message that belief that seen of like the battle version of belief that telling like the railroad belief to that to build just like would be along the lines that message like and then that as well might have definitely been like the hallucination creation powers of like one of like maybe like battle version of belief itself that using its own belief to make belief feel like the parallel world from like the real world and like perceive like the real people along with like the parallel to be parallel versions of that paper from really knows of like the real world really knows of Windows like it's definitely kind of framework. And that way to like really would be talking would be forcefully be made to get some also like the hallucinating creation that will be what and that way to like probably mess with like the adaptive activities like to that way gives really absolutely no other option but to like really gonna follow like the order of through like the message strategies and through like one of the so supplements of like one of or like multiple supplements upon their system might be the case definitely my preference. So like that my preference I'm looking right now and I'm looking for that once like run up along with like whole team of like supplements might have decided to like make their base that exact go around as their base since like their people like home that they that a particular like the channel not like they need take control of like the rats and like the rats story and all that happening within that exact go around. But like I'm looking what made it happen to be like after that incident like I'm looking like might have been my electron and state might have so managed electron so that the valve to like the real and might have made it take that go on. So like at that point when they have shown like that go on electron might have seen like the topic of like the shadow being present that. So straight away corner might have already like subordinate to like eliminate like that as particle of the amount of corner team members like the bangers and the for like the rainbow like might have straight away use their telekinesis about that straight away in like that but part of like the salmon might have been what I had straight away and then for forceful takeover like and the state might have done and like maybe from that point on like might have made that sort of actions like this definitely my purpose. So like right now that making sure like I'm right now as like believe would be just that bring that girl so that go on that and that exactly the person that will be lying away there will be like for enough and it's like the like the bad version like the real world like my and not my fault like the as like supplement is like being the finance that I'm exploring to the economy.